Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the second presentation today. I think you'll find a little bit of a change, hopefully an additional perspective on planning relating to water. I'm Adrian Brown. I know many of you. I'm a resident of Baker and a representative of I&C from the Baker neighbourhood and have been for many years. And in that capacity, I've been involved in a number of public activities associated with bettering Denver. This, for the most part, is not one of them, which is not to say that it won't benefit Denver. It is to say that it's not a Baker-specific activity. Indeed, it's barely even a Denver-specific activity. I've become embroiled in the last year and a half, 2 years, looking at stormwater, brought about by Denver's insistence on spending $300 million of your tax money, or actually fee money, to revamp a part of our stormwater system. It got me to wondering what we are doing with stormwater protection and why. And what we are doing in the first place is we are trying to prevent floods occurring in Denver as frequently as once a year. This is one about 3 years ago. And as infrequently as once a century. And what we are doing to achieve this is we are treating stormwater that comes out of the sky as a waste product. And we are attempting to get rid of it as quickly as we possibly can so that we can go out presumably and, get another latte instead of waiting the half hour or the 2 hours or the 3 hours or even a whole day once a century to get that latte. And we're paying a bunch of money to do it. And even more ridiculous to me as a water engineer over all of my life is that we are in a semi-desert. And here the good Lord sends us a huge dollop of water, and all we can do is say, God, how do we get rid of this quickly? And where do we go to pay a bunch of money to put it together quickly? In my mind, that is absolutely asinine planning, and I'm looking at the end of this discussion to have every person in this room get active in stopping this insanity, getting the simple solutions that I'm going to present to you, which every person in this room, with the possible exception of me because I've got 2 artificial hips, can implement themselves. On with my story. You'll notice on this picture, important to my presentation, what has flooded? The road. What gets people really mad in Denver when something floods? Their basement? No. You hardly hear anything about that. It's when they can't get in their car to go and get that latte that they get angry. That's what we're spending $300 million fixing. We need to stop. This over here is a vac truck. It's out there trying to unplug the drains, which have plugged up, and which this poor guy doesn't seem to be able to realise are there. So that the bottom line here is that this picture, which was famously put in the newspapers and was shown as utterly unacceptable, shows the true insanity of all of this. Getting rid of this floodwater, when it occurs, is a major engineering challenge. I mean, nobody be unclear about that. Under the whole of Denver, there are all kinds of water management systems designed to deal in Denver up till recently for 1 in 5 year storm, and now parts of Denver a 1 in 100 year storm. And these are massive engineering undertakings and very expensive and difficult to keep running. So what happens? Well, let me just quick go back to this. This water here is water that came from someplace else as a result of a storm. Look what is happening locally as a result of that same storm, which it presumably got. Looks pretty damp to me. Nothing. It's not flooded here. This guy could go out and play golf, chip balls around and so forth, in the rain doing this. This is something that somebody else gave him. Somebody else being mostly the people who live higher in the basin, which in Denver typically means in the nicer areas. So by allowing stormwater, we create a social problem. This is a picture from a storm event, a modelled storm event, of the low-lying areas of Denver. Down here is I-70, here's Globeville, here's Elyria, Swansea, the industrial and relatively affordable housing areas of Denver are all down there. But we don't care too much about them. Even the $300 million program that we're instituting right now won't protect these people. Doesn't affect anything about Globeville at all, except possibly that it puts a bunch of water in here into the Platte River, thereby exacerbating any flooding that's going to occur on the other side of the river in Globeville. And the reason for that is fairly complicated. I'm not going to go into it, but trust me, it's true. So what are we talking about here? You've heard, no doubt, about the recent flooding in Houston and on the East Coast. They were getting in the order of 15 to 30 inches of rain, this deep, coming out of the sky on every square foot of the whole area. And when that happens, yeah, you've got a problem, and a really serious problem. We don't. This is the design document that Denver uses for its stormwater that shows the rainfall depth for a 100-year, 6-hour storm. They use other things. I'm just going to deal with this one because it's illustrative. And if you look at this, this is for 6 hours. Right through here is the 3.5-inch rainfall. So a 100-year storm in Denver gives you this much water. That's why, when it happens, that guy can go out into his front yard and chip balls around, because it ain't there very long, and it isn't very deep even when it is. Take that water, however, aggregate it over 200,000 houses in Denver, and let it go down the road, and guess what? You're confronting what the guy in the floating car was confronting, a massive downstream problem. So, as with most problems, the solution to this problem that's sensible is a source solution. The solutions we have right now are from the aggregation of all of the runoff going down into a very limited set of conduits. Where does it come from? Well, this is a little pie chart. Stormwater flooding sources. To, I think, everybody's great surprise, 40% of the water that winds up running off, more or less instantaneously from our urban environment, comes from housing. And what do we do with that as homeowners? We have downspouts, and we, by God, like the city, rush to get that water off of our property, because it's a waste, and into the street. Everybody does that, pretty much, except me. The next big hit is from roads. Big surprise for people. A lot of people think, oh, the big problems with flooding and stormwater are industrial. Well, they're not. Well, they're significant, but they're not huge. 17%. So we're 40%, industry 17%, and roads that we insist on driving these gas-guzzling cars around on are actually the biggest villain of runoff. So we need to address all of those things. The 17% from industry kind of has been addressed a bit with the Green Roof initiative, which our city not only declined to support, but actively opposed. But the citizens very smartly decided that it was probably a good idea, possibly because they thought that industry would pay for it. But, you know, for whatever reason, it was successful. And it has been successful, and it does create a significant stormwater benefit, among other benefits. So, you know, and I just put in here because I know the parks people are here. Parks are 1%. The reason that's important is that is the area that we are currently using to solve our stormwater problem. So we've got 1% of the stormwater coming off the parks and 1% of the area, and we're going to use that 1% of the area to stop people playing golf and start storing our stormwater. I'm not going to be finished in 5. Because this is too important, I would believe. So what's our current system? Our current system, this is an example out of the Denver Storm Drainage Master Plan. It's a 40, 50, 60-page thing with huge plates like this showing all of the plumbing we've got to deal with this one problem. And this happens to be the one that's centered around the golf course that got dug up. And I'm not going to go into that more than to say it's complicated, it's meant to be complicated, it's bloody hard to do. But what are our opportunities here? And they can be encapsulated by looking around. Unless you look in this direction, Denver's pretty flat, the Queen City of the Plains. And this is an example, and you can see just how flat. This is a 10-to-1 vertical exaggeration. Look at the edge here. Bit of a slope on the west side, we're over here someplace. Even less of a slope over there. It's flat, folks. And from a stormwater point of view, that's both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a bad thing because when rain lands, if you want to get rid of it, you've got very shallow gradients. So the pipes don't work very well. And you don't get much runoff. And so what happens? You get buildup of water. People don't like that. The good thing, however, is that if you don't want to get rid of the water, but want to keep it someplace, it's flat. So it just tends to stay there. And if you put little dams in, you can help it do that. Second important thing, Denver's permeable, but basically covered with sand. Not everywhere, but it's permeable, so that any water that lands, you don't even have to store it for that long to get rid of the 1 hour, 2 hour peak in the storm thing. You can let it sink in, and that has other benefits I'll get to later. Third benefit, the water table is quite deep around Denver. That is, the water level underneath most of Denver is at least 20 feet below ground surface. Why? Because we paved over Denver. Used to be at the ground surface, but it's not anymore. We paved it over, prevented infiltration. Next thing you know, the water table drops. This groundwater is being used by Adams County, South Adams County, as its only water source. And so they're drawing this water down as well because they need to, and they have a right to. So what's my new vision? I make no apology for the quality of the graphics here. My son didn't draw them, I did. But, and some of you have seen these before. Here's the new vision. Capture the stuff off your roof, direct fall, put in little Denver dams if you need to, or put a little berm around your garden and keep it in. How long do you have to do that for? An hour's good, 3 hours is very good, 6 hours is overkill. Because it's a short-term event, folks. You keep it in there, it's not going down the road, you're good. And everybody can do this and can do it very cheaply. What happens? Well, after a while, this stuff just gets, actually, the physics are, it gets sucked into this unsaturated zone. This is the 25 feet of dry sand underneath your house. And then it goes down into the aquifer and sits there. And then very gradually, because it's so flat, the aquifer as well as the ground, drains quietly towards the South Platte, and it'll get there in 10 or 15 or 20 or 100 years. but a long, long time, those molecules. So this is my strategy. Okay, how can it be done? Very easily. This is it applied to my house. You go in, you put a little Denver dam around. Well, first you direct all of the where to stand. Direct all of the water off of the roofs of the various places into your garden, not into the street. Point one, which is you can buy that stuff at Home Depot, real cheap. Secondly, you then put in a dam around some, hopefully all, of your garden to stop the water from draining into your neighbours or, more importantly, into the street. And how do you do that? Here's the engineering, folks. This is bigger than real scale on this. This is a 6-inch strip of plastic in a 3-inch hole. And that's it. And the water backs up behind this. Does it leak? Yeah, a wee bit, but not quickly enough to defeat its purpose, which is, again, 1, 2, 3 hours max. And you can build it, if the Rolls-Royce version is to fill this with granular concrete. Why? Because then the plants don't grow on either side and be difficult to mow. Or you can just pack it with dirt, anything. And I think everybody in this room can do that themselves. And for my property, the total price of doing this, both of those things, is less than $1,000. If you're going to encourage storage and infiltration, parking lots, obvious, put in pervious type stuff so that stuff can sink in instead of blacktop, and try and prevent water from going off of it. Businesses, in addition to the green roofs, same deal. Just trap the water, let it sink in, and make things pervious. Alleys, same deal. Great storage opportunity. They're mostly flat. Put a little bump at either end. And the city can do that when they're redoing the pavements, once every 10 years or whatever. So there's zero incremental cost to doing this, despite what the city's engineer told me. And you can make these little dam sections flat enough that they're ADA compatible and my kids can ride over them on their bikes. And if I inject a little humour into this, folks, trust me, I am absolutely serious about this. You will have seen on the front page, my engineer stamp is signed. These are engineering drawings, and I am deadly serious. There is nothing funny about this. This is catastrophically bad city planning at its worst, and most destructive for the environment and for our community. Roads. We currently camber our roads, all of them, like this. Why do we do that? The main reason is so that we can go as fast as possible along those roads while it is raining without hydroplaning. This camber sheds the road, sheds the water. This photograph is in front of my house, and this enables all of my neighbours to whip down my road, killing my kids, and saving themselves, 5 seconds of time? So when they next redo my road, I want them to turn it into something that's flat. Why? Because then we can get 3 inches of detention without even having any drainage. Keep it there for an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, problem goes away. Remember, that was 40%, 42% of our total problem. Solve it every time we go fix the roads. Send a letter to your senator. No, council person. How do we make all this happen? It's easy. I tried to download a copy of my bill while I was sitting in the back there, and I couldn't. Denver charges you for stormwater based on the area of your property which is impermeable, which means that they have a rate which goes up the higher the amount of impermeable land you have, or property area you have on your land, and they also charge you per square foot of impermeable land, so you get a double whammy. And you may not have noticed, but that price is going to, in the next couple of years, to triple due to paying for our $300 million stormwater system. So that what we've got is a way for us to incentivize doing it at home. source control. What's that way? Let's make sure that if you can certify that you are containing all of your water on your property, the city will give you no stormwater charge. You don't deserve one because you didn't create the problem. Stroke of the pen stuff. Write your city council person, make it happen, and it will, and help me make it happen. I've just got 2 more slides and then we can go to questions. I want to get to a sustainability piece. I think most of you in the audience will have kind of figured this out, but I just want to highlight it. Remember, we had this system going on, that water's going in, we're saving it now instead of getting rid of it. We got a gigantic reservoir, as I mentioned earlier, to save it in. And I think to further incentivize this, we ought to allow anyone who does this to pull the water back for their own use with a simple little well. This is my lifeblood. I do this all the time. This well is solar powered. It's got a little motor. It's about 25 feet deep. You can literally drill it with a hand auger. And you can purchase a lovely little 12-volt pump in here, or put a windmill up, but windmills don't work very well in Denver unless they're huge. But a little solar pump, little positive displacement pump 1 gallon a minute, which is all you need. Most houses tend to use between 1/4 of a gallon a minute and 1/3 of a gallon a minute for their water needs total. So that's all we need. We can do this. And there will probably need to be some slight changes in the law to get this done, the water law. But they are not significant, and I think you can make a decent argument that you are allowed to have a single personal domestic well, even in the closed basin, groundwater basin, which Colorado is. So that's it. That's how we can solve the whole problem in a nutshell. You can solve it. There's no need to get the city involved at any point except to send them your certification that you're in good shape and that you're retaining all your water. The city doesn't have to do anything. You have to do something like once and keep it maintained once in a great while. Most people have these Denver dams in their gardens anyways, and you're ready to go. Thank you. And if you want to join the fun of making this happen, call me. There were 3 reasons. The first reason was that to do this would, and I am quoting the city engineer here, the now former city engineer, would be like, quote, herding cats, and so it couldn't be done. The second complaint was that there was no published peer-reviewed PhD on whether infiltration actually occurs in Denver. And there was a third reason, and I can't remember what it was, but the bottom line is I don't think they were that convincing, and I don't think, from what I'm hearing in the press, that I would get the same answer today, and so I plan to go back and ask that question, because I'm hearing about the city really wanting to be much more green sensitive after the green roof thing particularly, and I don't know whether that's true, but I plan to find out.
This will be on INC PDFs, will be on INC's website, and this presentation and your diagrams.
That makes me nervous about my drafting qualities, but thank you. That'll be great. I really appreciate that, and hopefully my contact thing too.
I have to, that the city would require, maybe a comment, a PhD to certify a new policy. I just wonder what genius, what PhD came up with the policy that we have now.
Could you say just a little bit about the connection between the drainage and I-70?
I would prefer not to, for this reason. No, for this reason. Because the moment one does that, and there is a connection, the moment one does that, that runs the risk of politicizing this eminently sensible solution with an eminently unsensible prior decision.